And now Khabib jumps the fence. Whoa! No! And he's going right at Dylan Dennis!
The UFC has given us some of the most exciting moments in sports history. Knockouts that left us speechless, our seats. But not every moment inside the octagon deserves a replay. Some moments are so shocking, so uncomfortable, or so downright disturbing that they probably should have been kept off camera entirely.
There it is. And it's always the glancing elbows, isn't it?
From bones snapping on live television to bodily functions gone horribly wrong, here are the UFC moments that should have been censored. Tim Sylvia. Most fighters walk away from the octagon with bruises, cuts, or maybe a black eye. Tim Sylvia walked away with an arm that looked like it had an extra joint. At UFC 48 in June 2004, Sylvia faced Frank Mir for the vacant UFC heavyweight championship. The fight lasted just 50 seconds, but what happened in that short time became one of the most visual examples of a broken limb that UFC fans have ever seen. Sylvia came into the fight with an 18-0 record, looking unstoppable. The game plan was simple. Keep the fight standing, use his reach advantage, and avoid Mir's dangerous ground game. But in a move that made no sense to anyone watching, Sylvia immediately tackled Mir to the ground.
Strong takedown. This is where Frank Mir wants to be. This is his spot.
It was like watching someone voluntarily walk into a trap. Mir, a jiu-jitsu black belt, didn't waste the opportunity. He locked in an armbar almost instantly, cranking on Sylvia's right arm with everything he had. What happened next made the entire arena go silent. Sylvia's forearm snapped under the skin. Not a small crack, not a hairline fracture, a full visual break that you could see clearly even without a replay. Referee Herb Dean immediately stopped the fight when he saw the arm buckle, but Sylvia didn't agree. He got up and started protesting, touching his arm and moving it around to prove it wasn't broken. The fans booed the stoppage. They thought Dean had made a mistake. Then the replay showed up on the big screen, and the arena fell completely silent. You could see the bone snap in slow motion, the forearm bending at an angle that arms are definitely not supposed to bend. Dean had made the right call. X-rays later showed 4 fractures in Sylvia's right forearm, 2 in the radius and 2 in the ulna. He underwent surgery that week and had a titanium plate attached to his arm, but the horror didn't end there. 16 years later in 2020, Sylvia posted pictures on social media showing the current state of his arm. The screws from the original surgery had started backing out, protruding through his skin, and the area had become infected. He reached out to the UFC, hoping they would cover the medical costs since the injury happened during one of their fights. The UFC refused, saying it wasn't their problem anymore. Sylvia didn't have insurance, and the surgery to fix the damage would cost over $10,000. His fiancée started a GoFundMe page, and fans donated enough to cover the operation. But the question remained, why wouldn't the UFC help one of their former champions deal with an injury that millions of people watched happen live on pay-per-view? Sylvia had been stripped of his title 9 months before the Mir fight after testing positive for stanozolol, a banned steroid, following his defense against Gan McGee. He was fined $10,000 and suspended for 6 months. He admitted to using the substance to help shed weight and apologized without trying to claim innocence. Maybe that history played a role in the UFC's decision not to help. Or maybe once a fighter's contract ends, the company just moves on. Either way, Sylvia's broken arm became one of the most replayed moments in UFC history, used over and over again to hype future Frank Mir fights. It was gruesome, shocking, and the kind of injury that made casual fans cringe and look away. The snap itself, the way Sylvia refused to believe it was broken, and the long-term consequences all added up to a moment that probably should have stayed off camera. Khabib Nurmagomedov and Conor McGregor. Speaking of moments that spiraled out of control, UFC 229 gave us a main event that had everything: tension, drama, skill, and one of the biggest brawls in MMA history. Khabib Nurmagomedov and Conor McGregor had been throwing insults at each other for months. McGregor attacked a bus carrying Khabib in Brooklyn, smashing the windows with a hand truck and injuring other fighters. He was arrested, charged with assault, and forced to do community service and anger management classes. The UFC turned the bus attack into promotional material, using the footage to sell the fight. The tension was real, the hatred was real, and when they finally stepped into the octagon on October 6, 2018, the world was watching. Khabib dominated the fight from the start. He took McGregor down in the first round and controlled him on the ground.
Wow! What an entry by Nurmagomedov, and now he has McGregor up against the fence.
In the second round, he staggered McGregor with a right hand, took him down again, and rained punches from the top. McGregor had a better third round, landing some solid shots while standing, but Khabib took over again in the fourth. He climbed on McGregor's back, locked in a rear naked choke, and forced the tap. The fight was over. Khabib had won. But instead of celebrating in the cage, he did something no one saw coming. He stepped away from McGregor, pointed at his corner, and started yelling. Then he threw his mouthpiece, climbed over the fence, and jumped into the crowd to attack Dillon Danis, McGregor's training partner and cornerman. Chaos exploded. Security rushed in to separate them. Meanwhile, two men from Khabib's camp climbed into the cage and attacked McGregor, who was still recovering from the choke. One attacked from the front, trading punches. Another snuck up from behind and sucker-punched McGregor, landing 4 blows before security pulled him off. Fans threw drinks and debris. Police officers swarmed the arena. UFC president Dana White looked absolutely disgusted. He called it the most disappointing moment in his 18 years running the company. Khabib's purse was withheld by the Nevada Athletic Commission pending an investigation. 3 members of his team were detained by police, but released after McGregor refused to press charges. White even considered stripping Khabib of his title, depending on how long his suspension would last. Head of the commission, but defended his actions, his country, and his family during the promotion of the fight. He argued that some things aren't meant for fight promotion. Religion, family, and heritage are personal, not marketing tools. Khabib also mentioned that Russian President Vladimir Putin called to congratulate him, saying he was proud. The Nevada State Athletic Commission eventually handed down punishments. Khabib was suspended for 9 months and fined $500,000. McGregor was suspended for 6 months and fined $50,000. Members from both camps also faced suspensions, but the damage was done. What should have been a celebration of Khabib's dominant victory turned into one of the ugliest scenes in UFC history. Dana White refused to award Khabib the championship belt in the arena, fearing it would spark a riot among the pro-Conor crowd. Khabib left without the belt being wrapped around his waist. The post-fight brawl overshadowed everything that happened inside the cage, and the footage became a permanent stain on one of the biggest pay-per-view events the UFC had ever produced. Years later, Khabib explained his mindset in an interview, saying he felt like an eagle hunting its prey. He said he wanted to bite someone's heart. For him, it wasn't just about winning the fight, it was about defending his honor after months of personal attacks. McGregor, on the other hand, described his version of events, claiming he fought off multiple attackers and landed clean shots on Khabib's teammates. The rivalry never got a rematch. Khabib retired in 2020 without ever giving McGregor another shot, leaving their story unfinished but unforgettable. Travis Wolford. Now, if broken bones and brawls weren't enough, the UFC has also dealt with something far more embarrassing: bodily functions that couldn't be controlled. At a ruckus in the cage event in West Virginia on October 3, 2015, Travis Wolford learned the hard way that eating chili before a fight is a terrible idea. Wolford was competing against Daniel Cooper in a heavyweight matchup. Early in the fight, Cooper was in top control, raining down strikes. Wolford tried to scramble to a better position, but Cooper locked in a guillotine choke, and that's when disaster struck. As Cooper squeezed, Wolford lost complete control of his bowels. He tapped out to the choke, but the damage was already done. When he stood up, feces started dropping out of his shorts and trailing down his leg. The crowd gasped. One woman in the audience could be heard dry retching, saying she was going to throw up.
Oh my God.
Wolford just stood there, visibly embarrassed and exhausted, unsure of what to do. The referee analyzed the situation and wisely decided to walk away from the mess. The commentator tried to lighten the mood by jokingly asking for volunteers to clean up the mat. Event promoter Christopher McCorkle Smith later explained on Facebook that Wolford had attended a chili cookout before the fights and ate a heavy meal. During the bout, the combination of the choke and the spicy food caused what Smith described as a colossal explosion. Chili beans and everything Wolford had eaten ended up all over the mat. Smith joked that Wolford instantly lost 15 pounds. The video of the incident went viral. racking up over 1 million views in just a few days. Fans dubbed Wolford the Brown Bomber, a nickname that stuck with him forever. To his credit, Wolford didn't let the embarrassment end his career. He announced plans to fight again the following month in Somersville to prove it was just an accident. But the damage to his reputation was permanent. The incident was so shocking that the Association of Boxing Commissions passed a new rule afterward, stating that any fighter who releases bodily fluids during a match would forfeit by technical knockout. It was a rule that nobody thought they'd ever need, but Travis Wolford made it necessary. While bodily malfunctions are definitely uncomfortable to watch, they're usually accidents. But some moments in the UFC are uncomfortable because of poor decisions made before the fight even started. Dennis Hallman. At UFC 133 in 2011, Dennis Hallman made a wardrobe choice that left everyone, including UFC President Dana White, completely horrified. Hallman walked out to fight Brian Ebersole wearing a pair of tiny blue Speedos that looked more appropriate for a beach volleyball tournament than a professional MMA bout. The crowd groaned the moment he revealed his outfit. Fans watching at home cringed, and Dana White was furious. Hallman later claimed he lost a bet to his teammates and had to wear the Speedos as punishment. But wearing them to a nationally televised pay-per-view event with millions watching was a decision that nobody understood. The fight itself didn't last long. Ebersole, who had his own strange quirk of shaving his chest hair into a giant arrow pointing up to his chin, dominated from the start. He won by referee stoppage in the first round. But the real problem wasn't the fight, it was what happened during it. As the two fighters scrambled on the ground, the camera caught a clear view of Hallman's groin being exposed. His cup, which White later joked was the size of a helmet, couldn't keep everything contained. The moment was brief, but it was enough to make everyone watching extremely uncomfortable. Dana White was so disgusted that he awarded Ebersole a $70,000 bonus just for getting the fight off television as quickly as possible.
I seriously gave Ebersole $70,000 bonus.
The bonus was officially listed as submission of the night, but everyone knew the real reason. White wanted to thank Ebersole for ending the nightmare. After the event, White erupted at UFC employees who were supposed to check fighters before they walked to the cage. He couldn't believe they let Hallman compete in those shorts. While state athletic commissions have the authority to approve or disapprove fight attire, they didn't intervene in Hallman's case. That failure prompted White to implement an official dress code for UFC fighters, banning Speedos and any similar attire from ever being worn in the octagon again. Hallman defended his choice by saying he wasn't the first fighter to wear a Speedo. He pointed out that in the early days of the UFC, fighters wore all kinds of strange outfits, including full GIs and even wrestling tights. But the modern UFC had moved past that era, and Hallman's throwback outfit felt completely out of place. He even called fans who criticized him sick, disgusting perverts for breaking down the footage frame by frame to catch the wardrobe malfunction. But that defense didn't hold up. Fans argued that they weren't looking for the malfunction. It was impossible to miss because Hallman chose to wear something completely inappropriate for a fight. Ebersole took the whole situation in stride, joking that he was worried about Hallman's cup and hoped his uniform wouldn't malfunction during the fight. He seemed more amused than anything else, saying the story would be something he could tell his grandkids and laugh about. Hallman's loss to Ebersole ended a 2-fight winning streak, and his career never fully recovered. The Speedo incident followed him everywhere, becoming the defining moment of his time in the UFC. It was a moment that didn't need to happen, a moment that made everyone uncomfortable, and a moment that definitely should have been kept off camera. BJ Penn. If wardrobe malfunctions were bad, blood loss on a level that looked like a horror movie might be even worse. At UFC 80 in January 2008, BJ Penn faced Joe Stevenson for the vacant UFC lightweight championship. Penn, known as the Prodigy, was already a former welterweight champion and was looking to become only the second fighter in UFC history to hold titles in 2 different weight classes. Stevenson was tough, resilient, and riding a 4-fight winning streak. But from the opening bell, Penn was in complete control. Just 5 seconds into the fight, Penn landed a right uppercut that sent Stevenson crashing to the mat. The crowd erupted. Penn tried to finish him immediately, but Stevenson survived and made it back to his feet. Penn continued to dominate with jabs, hooks, and relentless pressure. Then, with less than 40 seconds left in the first round, Penn sliced a brutal elbow across Stevenson's brow. The cut opened immediately, and blood began spurting everywhere.
There it is. And it's always the glancing elbows, isn't it?
It wasn't a slow trickle. It was a fountain, gushing out and blinding Stevenson. When the round ended, the cutmen had serious work to do. They managed to slow the bleeding temporarily, reducing the spurt to a leak. But when the second round started, Penn immediately targeted the wound. He landed jabs and crosses that reopened the cut, and blood started pouring again. About midway through the second round, Penn knocked Stevenson down with a left uppercut. He quickly took Stevenson's back and locked in a rear naked choke. As Penn squeezed, Stevenson's face turned red, and blood continued shooting from his forehead in a steady stream. The image became iconic, Penn applying maximum pressure on the choke, while blood sprayed from Stevenson's brow, painting the mat and both fighters. Stevenson tapped out at 4 minutes and 2 seconds of the second round, and Penn was crowned the new lightweight champion. The amount of blood loss was staggering. The octagon looked like a crime scene. Stevenson's face, chest, and trunks were soaked in red. Penn's arms and torso were covered as well. It was a gruesome sight, one that highlighted both Penn's skill and the brutal reality of MMA. Penn later joked that the blood helped lubricate his arm, making it easier to sink in the choke. He also said he was worried the fight might get stopped due to the cut, but he didn't want to win that way. He wanted a finish, and he got one. Stevenson, to his credit, showed incredible toughness by surviving the first round and coming back for more in the second. But Penn was simply too skilled, too focused, and too determined. The win moved Penn one step closer to cementing his legacy as one of the greatest fighters in MMA history. But the image of blood shooting from Stevenson's head while Penn choked him unconscious was something that many fans wished they hadn't seen. It was a moment that showcased the violence of the sport in the most visual way possible, and it definitely should have been censored. Angela Magana. Finally, we come to another wardrobe malfunction that caused a fight to be stopped and later edited out of official replays. At UFC 218 in December 2017, Angela Magana faced Amanda Cooper in a strawweight bout on the early prelims. Cooper dominated from the start, using her wrestling to take Magana down and control her on the ground. Early in the first round, while Cooper was in top position and Magana was defending from her back, Magana's Reebok sports bra shifted out of place. The camera caught everything, and UFC 218 viewers got an eyeful. Referee Keith Peterson immediately stopped the fight to allow Magana to adjust her top and cover herself. The crowd reacted loudly, and commentator Joe Rogan remarked that people cared more about the wardrobe malfunction than anything else happening in the fight. Peterson restarted the bout in the same position, and Cooper went right back to work. She continued to dominate with her wrestling and ground strikes, eventually taking Magana's back in the second round. After failing to secure a rear naked choke, Cooper transitioned back to top control and unleashed a barrage of punches. The referee stopped the fight at 4 minutes and 32 seconds of the second round, awarding Cooper the TKO victory. The UFC quickly edited the official replay, removing 15 seconds of fight time from the first round to erase the wardrobe malfunction. But the damage was done. The incident had already been seen live by everyone watching, and clips spread across social media almost instantly. Magana took to Twitter after the fight, expressing frustration with the stoppage. She claimed that referees didn't let women fight their way out of tough situations the way they did with male fighters. She argued that she was still aware, still moving, and should have been allowed to continue into a third round. But Cooper and many observers disagreed. Magana hadn't won a fight in over 6 years and was on a 5-fight losing streak. Cooper believed Magana didn't belong in the UFC anymore, saying the sport didn't need her, but maybe she needed it. Cooper continued her criticism in the post-fight interview, questioning how Magana could remain confident after so many losses. She said that every time she herself lost, she questioned her abilities and had to rebuild her confidence. But Magana kept losing and somehow still believed she was great. The wardrobe malfunction added another layer of embarrassment to an already difficult night for Magana. It highlighted ongoing issues with Reebok's UFC apparel, which had caused similar problems for other female fighters in the past. Fans and fighters alike questioned why the uniforms were still failing after years of use. For Magana, the moment became another entry in a career filled with controversy and setbacks. She stayed in the headlines through social media antics, including an infamous incident where she compared UFC champion Chris Cyborg's looks to the main character from the Saw horror movie franchise. Cyborg responded by attacking Magana at a UFC athlete retreat in Las Vegas. Whether the wardrobe malfunction at UFC 218 was due to poor uniform design, the chaos of the fight, or just bad luck, it was a moment that nobody wanted to see. It was uncomfortable, unnecessary, and like so many other moments on this list, it probably should have been censored. From broken bones to post-fight brawls, from bodily malfunctions to wardrobe failures, the UFC has given us plenty of moments that cross the line from shocking to downright disturbing. These are the moments that remind us that MMA is raw, unpredictable, and sometimes way too real. Which of these moments shocked you the most? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section, and before you leave, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to MMA Rivals so you don't miss the next ones.